All right. Here's a tray for a tap set. Pulled into Tinkercad. I want to add a little notch here because mine has a little end coming out of it that the original model did not. So what I'm going to do here is erase the majority of the model because I just need to capture that little indentation. Move it over a little bit more. Make it easy. All right. So I just took a block and erased all of it. And here is a test block that's going to help me capture where I want to put that little notch. All right, I'm going to drop a ruler in here so I can see the dimensions. So here's with dimensions. You don't have the ruler. You just have the dimensions inside the property window. So you drop a ruler and you can always have the dimensions of whatever object you've clicked on. All right, so we're going to set this to be a little bit smaller. What we're trying to do is capture slightly bigger than the notched area. We're going to be able to use that to center. And right now you press W. W allowed me to capture the height of the bottom layer of that tray. I can explain that more later, but basically W makes it brings the height of the object up to the very bottom of the tray. It's a little fiddly. All right, here it is, slightly bigger than the inside hole. So I want to capture inside of that. So what I can do here is I can make it a hole and then group it together, and then that object will be exactly the inside of that cavity. It captures the radius and everything, or at least a representation of it. See, here it is, right there. Make the original object a hole, group it to that little piece, and there we go. This represents the inside area. All right, I want to shrink it down to be about the size of the notched area I want to add. So this is going to be the block, and unfortunately I made them both red. But this block is basically going to be the notched area, and I'm going to use the other red part to keep it to scale. I'm trying to keep them aligned. And this is about where I remember that I can actually hard align them to their edges. So now it's perfectly in that corner, so I can see if I have the radius right. And you got to fiddle around with it to find the right viewing angle so it makes the most sense. That's just scrolling out. Moving the mouse around with the middle mouse button has different effects than with the left or right mouse button. But this seems like a decent enough perspective. Just checking different radii to make sure that what I had was a closer match. So I'm just adjusting the radius of the other part to see if I'm coming close to it. I'm sure there are better ways, but I like to use the radius of the actual object as opposed to cutting away with another thing called a fillet. All right, so I'm adjusting the dimension to be the width of the notch I want to cut. And a lot of times the radius is directly proportional to the size of the object. So if you make it smaller or narrower, look, you're messaging me right there. You make it smaller or narrower, the radius will change. So it looks more of an oblong pill. So we're going to select the items and we're going to align them together. All right, make sure they're aligned. Are you messaging me again? All right, so now they're bottom aligned and they're front to back aligned off that center, off that edge. And the part is way bigger than it needs to be, but that's fine. It helps maintain. So I'm just hiding the object now as I ungroup to bring the full tray back into view and get rid of these cutting boxes. And that is more or less the cut around representation. And here's about where I remember that I need to move things around. So I adjust the snap grid, which when you just press left and right on an object is how far in and out it moves. And it's about here where I realize I didn't center it. So when you highlight a bunch and you hold shift and then click one of the objects, it centers against that object that you held shift when you clicked on it again. And here I'm unhiding. I can explain that later, but unhiding brings it back into view. Ungrouping takes away the cutaway boxes. And now this is exactly centered in that area, and I want to scooch it out about 0.2 of a millimeter. So I just press the left arrow key twice and then make it a whole object, and it cuts it away. So that roughly took about 6 minutes. I'm just trying to bring it into view to make it easier to see. And that's it. That's one notch. Hopefully you found that helpful.